All right, all right, all right. How's everybody doing tonight? Hope y'all are good. We got a devotional topic tonight that is eerily spot on for my life. If you knew all of the things that was going on at the Brado household right now, and you clicked on this devotional and started reading it, it would be one of those things where you're like, oh, okay, I know where this is headed, or I know what's going on here. So, yeah, this one was right when I started reading this. I was like, I knew right where it was at and why I was there and all those things. So it's kind of like that church service you sit in, and you're sitting there and you swear the pastor is speaking right into your mind and right into your heart. This was kind of one of those tonight. So when I start sharing it, I'll try not to share too much personal stuff. But it was reading this devotional, thinking through the last couple weeks, months of our lives here at the Brado house. It was like, okay, I get it. So anyway, hopefully you're all good. Hopefully you had a good Thursday, one day closer to the weekend. Hopefully one day closer to warm. I am over the cold. It's nice the sun shines, but man, is it cold. Go outside to do anything, your hands are freezing. And I asked my wife, like, why do we live in Michigan? When I go outside and my face hurts and my hands hurt and I'm only out there 5 minutes, like, why do I live here? Because family's here, right? Church is here, family's here. That's what you know. It's hard to leave all that stuff, right? So that's why we stay in Michigan. Plus, it is pretty dang nice when spring rolls around and everything starts greening up and the weather gets warm, and then fall in Michigan is unbeatable. But we have to pay the price of winter to have the others. So there's always a price to pay for everything, right? It's just the way the world works. And a buddy for the longest time begged me to move to Florida, and said it's nice here so often. Like, yeah, but then in June, July, and August, you just sweat to death and die because it's so hot. So there is no perfect, I don't think, except for maybe Hawaii, but I've never been there, so we'll see. So anyways, hope you guys had a good day. Hopefully Friday's set up to be a good day for you, and then we're at the weekend, so should be good. Should be good. I got to stay home tonight and do the devotional. Mindy drew the short straw and had to take Kylene to soccer practice way over by Romeo, Michigan. So normally I draw the short straw on the soccer practices and stuff, but because I had to do this tonight, Mindy drew the short straw, so she's doing the triathlon tonight. So I get to stay home with Kelsey and Kinsley. Not bad. Not bad. Whew. All right. Well, like always, if you have something you want to mention or if you have a prayer request, go ahead and throw it on Facebook. And when I get done with the devotional, I'll jump back over on Facebook and check it out and see what you got. And we'll mention it or pray for it or any of those things. So, all right. Let me switch back over and we'll get going here. So like I prefaced earlier, if you've lived my life or been in this house for the last few months, few weeks especially, few days, and then you clicked on this devotional and seen what it said, it would be like, yeah, okay. So the title for the devotional, this is a Billy Graham devotional that we're doing. And so we were doing Tozer stuff, and now we're doing Billy Graham. And the title of the devotional for tonight is His Timing is Perfect. It's His timing is perfect. So obviously God's timing is perfect. So I'm going to preface this whole thing, maybe ask you a question or make a comment or whatever, but think through your life, when has God asked you to do something that you didn't want to do? When has God asked you to do something you didn't want to do? Or when has God told you to not do something that you really wanted to do, right? So like, when is that thing that you've prayed and prayed and prayed and you've been asking and asking and asking and God says no, or God says not? He doesn't really say no, but he says not yet. Have you ever felt that? Or has he told you to do something, like you just feel like you're supposed to do this thing that God's asking you, willing you to do this thing, and you're like, nope, timing's terrible, I don't want to do it, it's not going to be any fun, I can see, I don't want to do it, the timing's off, no, it's not any good for me. Have you ever had those times in your life? I've had both of those times in my life, honestly, where God's asked me to do something and I didn't want to do it, and he's asked me not to do something and I really wanted to do it, right? If we're honest, we've probably all had those moments, right? If we're being honest. So the title again is His Timing is Perfect. And he starts by saying, God has a plan for the life of every Christian. Every circumstance, every turn of destiny is for your good. That's a rough opening sentence, right? Do we really believe that? I mean, we would like to say, oh yeah, I totally believe that. I believe that. Every circumstance, every turn of destiny is for my good. Like, I believe that. God has a plan for me. Every circumstance, every turn of destiny is good for me. It's easy to say that, but do we really, really believe it? Because what? If we really, really believe it, then it affects our thoughts, and our thoughts affect our actions, and our actions affect our obedience, right? So if we really, really believe it, then we step out in faith, we step out in obedience in those things. So that's when, does God ask you to do something you don't want to do? All right? Do we really believe that every circumstance, every turn is good for us? Or does God say, you need to do this even though you don't want to? Or I know you really want to, but I don't want you to at this moment. You got to wait. If we really, really believe that every circumstance, every turn of destiny is good for us, then we can do that. So this next sentence makes that a lot clearer. It said, it is the working together for completeness. His plan for you is being perfected. So every one of them circumstances, every one of those turns of destiny is his plan working together for the completeness of you. His plan for you is being perfected. All things working together for your good and for his glory. And so that's really the sentence that is kind of the showstopper. All things working together for your good and his glory, right? Two-part equation. It's not just all about you. It's out for your good for his glory. You have to have that in the right context, or else otherwise it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes anyways, but it's a really tough pill to swallow when you just think that God's just trying to dictate to you, right? He's not just trying to dictate to you. He's not just trying to shove it down your throat. He's not trying to be mean, lord over you. He's the boss and you're the peon and you just do what you do. You know, it's for your good, for his glory. So, of course, Billy Graham wrote this, and so it says, as a young Christian, Ruth, my wife, so we're talking about Ruth Graham, Billy's wife, it says, as a young Christian, Ruth, my wife, wanted to be a missionary, as were her mother and father. But God had other plans for her life. Changing circumstances revealed to her God's will to her, and she was happy where God had placed her. So many of us ask God to change his circumstances to suit our desires, instead of us conforming to his will. Is that true of your life? It's been true of my life. More times than I care to admit to. How many times have you prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed and you know what God's telling you, you know what God's showing you, and you're like, no, that's not good. That's not good for me. Like that ain't gonna work. And so you just keep praying. You don't pray for the ability to be obedient. You pray for God to change the circumstances so it makes it a little easier to be obedient, right? Or it makes it a little easier for you to swallow, or makes it a little easier for your family to accept, or all those things. God's not in the business of doing that. Why? Why is he not in the business of that? Because he knows, if we go back to the top, the beginning of it, all things are working out for your good and his glory. If he takes and changes the circumstances, he takes and waters it down, then it's not so much so good for you, and it's not so much good for his glory anymore. Sometimes God does what God does so that he shows out as being God, that it's only something that he could do. If it's something that Jason could do in my intelligence and my effort and my power and my whatever, it's not a God thing no more. Well, then I get the glory for it, and then what good is it? At the end of the day, it ain't good for his kingdom, for sure. So, for me, that's really hard, because it's easy to say. It's much, much harder to live that out, right? So it says, so many of us ask God to change his circumstances to suit our desires instead of us conforming our desires to his will. It says, don't let circumstances distress you. Rather, look for the will of God for your life to be revealed in and through those circumstances. So there's a saying that I like. It's kind of, I don't even know if it's a saying. I can kind of give you my paraphrase of it. But it basically is, don't try to crawl out from underneath the hard stuff, right? If you really feel like you're living in God's will and God's plan, and something hard gets to you, it's part of his plan. It's for a plan. It's for his purpose, right? And so if you try to crawl out from underneath of it, you're not getting the desired effect that he wants you to get, for you to receive out of that circumstance. In that circumstance, if there's struggle, if there's heartache, if there's pain, if there's experience that you don't want, guess what? There's a purpose for that, and there's a plan for that. And that's super easy to say, I know. But I've lived certain things that I've done a good job of not crawling out from underneath of them, and I've lived certain things that I did a terrible job and weaseled my way out of them, and I didn't get, looking back on it, I could see it. I didn't get the desired effect that God wanted me to get. Well, guess what happened a few times? God does what God does. He just circled me around and brought me right back to that same point and said, look, you need this tool. You need to get through this set of circumstances. You got to figure this out. You need this going forward. And so I wasn't able to crawl off from underneath of it. I had to go back through and circle around, and I felt like an Israelite, honestly, is what I felt like. You know how they just kept circling the desert, circling the desert, and they would go and they would be close to God, and then they would fall away from God, and then they would repent, and they would just kind of do that same loop over and over. There's been times in my life where I felt like that. Finally, God's like, hey, dummy, you're going to keep circling the wagons, you're going to keep circling the desert like the Israelites until you just man up and figure out, this is my will for you, this is part of your life. You're either going to do it or we're not going anywhere. And so, when I read this devotional, it would just hit me spot on. The prayer at the end of it is this. It says, how often I want to run ahead of your leading. Father, let me trust you completely and realize that in the midst of all the events of this day, you are working your will for my life. That's really the key. If you boil the whole thing down, I used to listen to Dr. Charles Stanley a ton. When I worked third shift in the shop, I would listen to his podcast and his sermons and all that. And he would always say that as a Christian, nothing gets to the Christian that hasn't been filtered through the hands of the Father. That was how he always worded it. Nothing gets to the Christian that hasn't been filtered through the hands of the Father. And so if I'm sitting back and these circumstances are coming at me, these experiences are coming at me, problems, sometimes good things, sometimes bad things. But if I filter all of those things through that one saying of nothing gets to the Christian that hasn't been filtered through the hands of the Father, meaning this, to me, this means this. If it's got to me, God's allowed it, or God's gave it, or God's mandated, or whatever, however you want to word that. But if it's gotten to me, kind of like Job, in the story of Job, it would fit right in here perfectly. If it's gotten to me, God's allowed it, God's give it, whatever. It's for a purpose, it's for his plan, it's for his will, and I'm to go through that experience so that I can extract out of it what God wants me to extract out of it. Does that make sense? And so, like I said, I've lived this on the good side, and I've lived this on the bad side. I've stuck it out, and I've went down the hard road, and I've learned the lesson, and I've got that tool for my toolbox. Like, I got that experience in that circumstance, and I was able to use it for something else, for a ministry thing, or for a job thing, or for a personal thing, or whatever. But I've also went the other way and took the low road, the easy way, and crawled up from underneath of it, and then I could just see on the back side of it, and I just felt terrible about it, right? You just feel it, like that conviction, that you just feel terrible, like, yeah, I really chickened out on that one, right? We've all been there. None of us are perfect. I've had my good, I've had my bad. I'm sure all of you have had the same way. But if we just, at the end of the day, like the big takeaway for the day, is that we realize in the midst of all the events of the day, you are working your will for my life. So if it's gotten to me as a Christian, it's gotten through God. God's allowed it to get through me, and it's for a purpose in His plan. And we just got to figure out, pray our way through it, read our Bible, get in the Word, and just see what God's character is, and just see what God's past practices kind of thing are, and just know it's for a purpose. It's for His plan. And at the end of the day, we're going to be better off for having gone through it. And that's really easy to say, and sometimes when you're in the midst of some really cruddy stuff, the last thing you want some Christian to do is come alongside you and say, oh, don't worry, if it's gotten to you, it's God's got it, it's God's timing, it's God's will. Well, when you're sitting in that hospital room, or you're sitting in bankruptcy, or you're sitting job loss, or whatever it is, sometimes the last thing you want to hear is some well-meaning Christian that come along, God's timing, God's good, God's great all the time, like it's God's timing. It's true. It's absolutely rock solid truth. But sometimes it's hard to hear, and a lot of times it's really hard to live. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I've lived both sides. Like I said, I've done it, and I've not done it. And man, every time you do it, it is so worth it. And every time you don't do it, it's just like such a bummer. So I don't know. Hopefully you got something out of that. I know I did. I could talk on it for an hour and give you example after example of in my life and different people's lives that I've seen. His timing is always perfect. It's not always fun. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a blast. Sometimes it's the best ride you'll ever have. And then sometimes it is the cruddiest thing that you'll ever walk through. But in both of those, it's for God's will and it's for God's purpose, and ultimately it's for God's glory. And if we're Christians, that should be our ultimate motivation, our ultimate drive. So, I don't know. Hopefully you got something out of that. I'm going to jump back over to Facebook and see if there's any prayer requests or any comments. Every time I do this, it goes away. I have to figure this out. All right, there it is. Let me click on it and see if there's anything on there. All right, let's see. All right, I don't see nothing. Aaron Townsend, what's up, buddy? Hope you're doing good. Commented on here a couple times. All right, I don't see nothing. Like I mentioned yesterday, please be in prayer for one of Kylene's friends named Reagan. She's a 14-year-old little girl, friend of Kylene's. She's struggling with headaches really, really bad, and they can't figure out what in the world's wrong with her. They've tried medications, they've tried chiropractors, they've tried the gamut so far, and they have not been able to figure it out and relieve her headaches and stuff. So she's struggling for sure. And as a dad, to see her struggling and just how close they are to us and stuff, it breaks my heart. So continue to be praying for Reagan if you would. She's at the point now she can't play basketball. She's had to quit soccer. She's just chilling at home, trying not to get headaches, and man, that stinks. If you knew that little girl, how active she was and how athletic she is, to see her just chilling in her house, just trying to hope that her head don't hurt, and my dad heart just breaks. So be praying for Reagan if you would. Continue to pray for Pastor Ed as his leg gets better and stuff, and keeps healing on that. Be praying. Man, I cannot speak tonight. Praying for Alexis. Alexis, I don't know if everybody knows, some people might, he tore his rotator cuff and tore his bicep, the last that I heard. And so he was trying to get a sooner hospital day and to get rechecked out and reevaluated and MRI and all that kind of stuff. So be praying for Alexis as well, that he has a good experience and can get stuff sped up and get fixed back up again. So Tammy the Typalist just commented, her cousin David is having surgery for a brain tumor So for sure we want to pray for Tammy's cousin David. We haven't mentioned this. Mindy's hasn't mentioned it to anybody, I don't think. But Mindy's mom has struggled with tumors in her brain, in her head. Her post reminded me of that. And Mindy's mom's tumor is back in her head this is bad that I've lost track, but it's either the third or the fourth time that she's had a tumor in her head. And so they thought it wasn't a big deal. She just had an appointment this week, and they did some more tests, and the doctor was surprised in not a good way how fast the tumor has grown. The other times they've been, for the most part, non-cancerous. So we're hoping it's that way again. But her mom is old and frail. I think she said she weighs like 85 pounds. So she's not super strong and healthy. So I just don't know what that means. And I can see it weighing heavy on my wife. And so if any of you are married and you know if there's something weighing heavy on your wife, it affects the house, whether she wants it to or not. And I'm not down on her for that because it is what it is. But so be praying for Mindy's mom. And Mindy's dad just had his leg amputated not that long ago. And so he's a struggle already, trying to get moving and all those things. And so Mindy's mom with this tumor is not good. So be praying for Mindy. Be praying for her mom and dad. Be praying for Mindy's brother and sister and stuff. They're going to have some decisions to make, and it's going to affect all of us, So that's some of what's weighing heavy at the Burrito house right now. Aaron Townsend commented, be praying for my buddy who's in a clinic at Chicago. So let's be praying for Aaron's buddy for sure. We'll do that. So let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then we'll pray real quick, and I got a couple announcements, and we'll get out of here. So, Father, I thank you for your goodness. I thank you for your grace. I'm thankful that you are with us and that you are for us and that you see us right where we're at in our good times, in our high times, and in our bad times, and our low times, God. God, I just pray that you would be with Reagan, God, that you would heal her, that you would give her doctors wisdom outside of what they currently have, apparently, God, that they would be able to see it for what it is and be able to fix it, and that she wouldn't have to do medications and all of those different things that she's trying, that she could just be a normal 14-year-old little girl going to school, playing her sports, and having fun with her friends, God. That's what we want, God. Please relieve her of her headaches, God. God, I just pray that you would be with Tammy's cousin, that David, that you would be with him, and that his tumor would be able to be handled, that he would have a full recovery, God, and that you would be glorified in that he would see you and he would know you in the midst of all of those things, God. I know that's one of those things like the devotional tonight, your timing, God. God, I just pray that he would just sense that you are there with him, and that you're a part of that, a huge part of that, and just he would know that you love him and you're with him and you're for him right there in that moment. God, be with Aaron Townsend, his buddy. God, I don't know the circumstances, but he's in a clinic in Chicago. I just pray that you would be with his friend in that clinic in Chicago, God, and that whatever needs to take place there, you would be a part of that, God, and that you would be known in his life, and you'd be known in that situation, God, and that you would be able to be honored and glorified in that. God, I just pray for his buddy, that he would see you and he would know you and he would thank you in that, and that his relationship with you would be closer and better because of it. God, I just pray that you'd be with Alexis, God, that you would not only heal his shoulder and his bicep, God, but you would heal his spirit. You would heal him mentally, emotionally, as well as physically, God. I just can't imagine the mental, the psychological component of this, God. To be so close in rehab and those things, and then to have that big step back. So, God, I just pray that you would be with Alexis. God, I know he loves you and he's praying to you. God, I just pray that you would just make yourself known to him in a way that he would just know that you are in control, that your timing, even in this, like really, really low, God, that you have a purpose and you have a plan. And you have a timing for all of it. And it's just up to him to be okay with that, as hard as that is, and to figure that out and to walk with you in that, God. God, I just pray that you would be with our church. As we have service this Sunday, God, I just pray that you'd give Eddie a word, Pastor Ed a word for us that would resonate with us, that we would have open ears and open minds and open hearts to receive that message for what you would have it to be for us, God. Guys, pray that you would be with the Union Church tonight as they have their first service. God, I pray that you would be glorified, that your gospel would be preached, and that people would respond to that word. God, I thank you for all you do. I'm thankful that you are with us and that you are for us and that you see us, God. God, in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, guys. Westside, 10:45 this Sunday. I'm ready. I'm stoked. Week 2 being back in the building. Last week was, as the kids will say, last week was lit, right? 45-year-old guys probably shouldn't say that. It don't come off the same, but last week was good. This week's going to be even better. I can feel it. So 10:45 in the building if you can. If you can't, if you got a sniffle, a cough, a cold, don't feel good, a temperature, whatever, don't come. Stay home and watch the streaming. But if at all possible, be in the building. Do yourself a favor. Be in the building, right? It's always good to be in God's house with God's people on a Sunday morning. So, all right. See you all. I'll be there. My whole family will be there. You're officially invited. If you're watching this and you're not a Westside member, 10:45, 10:40, you might want to get there. You can sit next to me and my family. You're invited. I'm inviting you. My phone number is 810-691-0383. Call me. Talk to me. You're invited. We'll figure it out. You can sit next to me. You need a ride. You need some lunch. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I just want you to have your booty in the seat by me, right? Come and hear God's word. All right. Love you guys. God bless you. See you Sunday morning, hopefully.